You're muted, Troy. Your headset's not on.
Hello everyone, welcome to YouTube Model Builders Tuesday night presentation. Tonight we have the great pleasure of having Jim Lincoln and Dave Vallejos, the DNSRR. My name is Troy, I'll be your guest speaker tonight with the Pacific North Central. Tonight's presentation is on reliable track work. So if there's any questions or anything, please feel free to go ahead and shoot them up there in the Q&A. Just a reminder to all viewers to keep checking with the YouTube Model Builders website at youtubemodelbuilders.com for all the latest news and schedule on info for the live show hosted by Big Bill Graham, which is once a month, the eMag, which is a bi-monthly, and viewers can sign up for a subscription link to be emailed to you. Plus, the eMag is always looking for model railroaders to send in articles and pictures to be published. Plus, don't forget about the new and improved presentations with Geno, Barry, and Mike. MRR Tech shows newly added, and the normal moderated presentations with Dude and Troy. Plus, don't forget about the Thursday night general hangouts with Johnny Reb of Southeast Rails. Hope you guys all enjoyed tonight's show. And without further ado here, we'll bring up Jim Lincoln, and maybe you can go ahead and talk about himself here a little bit and tell us a little bit what's going on.
Okay, well, greetings everyone in wherever this is, land. So, sorry. My name's James Lincoln, Jim Lincoln. I presently work as a conductor for the Boston commuter rail system. Been doing that since 2011. Before that, for about 4 years, I worked as a conductor for CSX. And I am presently involved with I've been on the Model Rail Radio, my podcast, and well, I'm one of the co-hosts of Model Railroad Hobbyist Podcast and Model Railcast. So, and I made a cameo appearance, sort of, on the Scotty Mason show as well, once. So, and did a lot of work on Mike Rose's layout, doing track work. There's also Scotty Mason also has a DVD featuring me as the talent about handling track. So. That's where I'm coming from. I have dabbled in HO. I've worked in N. I presently have an N scale and a Proto 48 layout. I kind of mainly do Proto 48 stuff right now. But apart from that, I'm just kind of crazy about track. So this reliable track work, that's fascinating, because that's not what my presentation is about at all, but that's okay. It can be worked into that theme. You want me to just bust straight into it, or what would you like me to do?
Well, what exactly is Proto 48? If you can kind of go into that. just a little bit.
Well, wow. For those who know anything about O scale, what everybody, there's 3 rail O, there's 2 rail O, and then there's Proto 48. And the difference between Proto 48 and 2 rail O is that Proto 48, one of the issues, one of the features of O scale is that the rails, because of a decision that was made way back when model railroading really started in the 30s, I believe, the distance between the rails on O-scale track scales out to 5 feet. The reason for that is in the United States they were using mechanisms from the O-scale equipment in England, which is actually 7 millimeter, and that works out to 1/43rd scale. Well, that was too complicated for us Americans, so we preferred 1/48 because it's a 1/4 inch to the foot. Well, they didn't want to go through the aggravation of making all new mechanisms that were correctly 4 feet 8.5 inches, so they just used the British mechanisms and used that standard for now ad infinitum. So now we're stuck with a standard that isn't right. And while people can say none of the standards are really right, that's neither here nor there. The difference is bigger between Proto 48 and and 2-rail O or 3-rail O even is because it scales out to 5 feet. But it normally the ethos of Proto 48 is you're getting, not only do you use the right width between the rail heads, but it's also the right wheel contours, and generally it's a higher level of detail modeling when you go to Proto 48. Working knuckle couplers where you actually use the cut lever on the side of the car to open the knuckle. That, going to that point. A lot of guys, they have magnetic, well, maybe not a lot of guys, but there are a number of guys that have magnets in the air hoses, so you actually have to lace air hoses and things like that when you're working in Proto 48. Not everybody does that, because there are several very large basement filling Proto 48 layouts, which takes a lot of effort. Because normally when you're handling with Proto 48, you're spiking 4 spikes every single tie. It's not like handling in HO where you're spiking every 5th tie. So it's a lot more involved, and for those who feel that there's a certain zen and relaxation in handling track, well, you've got loads of that when you're doing Proto 48. So I do have some photographs of what? Oh, sorry. I do have some photographs of Proto 48 track in the presentation. So, and one of the things I've been doing is I design track parts for O scale, not just Proto 48, but also O scale in general. Like there's hook tie plates. I've done adjustable rail braces and the tie plate arrays for turnouts because they're different. The clips that hold the points apart, and stuff like that. And I do have lots of detailed photographs of prototype track in the presentation, and that's kind of along the lines of where I go with it. And I found I have a very accurate N-scale railroad, but what I found is that Proto 48 seems to scratch the model railroading itch better than N-scale does, because I kind of I was able to prove the proof of concept with the N-scale railroad, and thus it doesn't quite scratch the itch as well. And I'm going to apologize to everyone. One of my dogs has decided that he's going to start squeaking his ball. So you're going to hear him in the background. There's nothing I can do, because the disruption would be even worse if I locked him out of the door, out of the room here where I'm at. So, is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I can blather on enough so you can't hear the squeaking ball.
Well, go ahead and blabber away.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can't hear it.
Yeah, it's pretty. If I stop talking, you'll hear it, because he's not doing it consistently, but he's gonna start destroying things pretty soon. Anyway, but that's okay. Okay, so I guess I'll just start into the presentation, and I'll go to the screen share. Let me start the thing first. This is all new and exciting. So for me, start slideshow. Oops. Oh. Ah. All right, never mind that. I mean, just. I'll just. Yep, there we go. All right, we'll just screen share entire screen. So we should see Dave. You should see Dave Vallejos right now. Hey. Okay. So the presentation is Track as a Model 2 by me. And that's a photograph of the B&A, the Boston and Albany, I believe in Natick, Massachusetts. And the question is what are we? And I'm looking at a screen, so if anybody has any questions, just bust in and any answers, because I'm going to be asking everyone here questions as well. So the question is, what are we? Are we model railroaders, or are we railroad modelers? And that's largely a matter of semantics, depending on how you want to look at it. But you know, it's kind of a play on words. But there are some people that would, you know, they want to have large model railroads and operate, and that's a lot of fun. And there's other people that want to kind of, the Proto 48, generally the Proto 48 mindset is that of the railroad modeler who is, you know, trying to do things, at least everything involved with their model railroad, to a very high level of modeling effort, much like the military modelers, which some of the best modelers are. And so railroad modelers look to model prototype railroads accurately, and that includes rolling stock, operations, structures, right of way. But what about track? It seems like with a lot of people's railroads is that track is the item that's left out. They'll do hyper detailed structures. They'll go through the nth degree to figure out what cars were on their section of railroad at what time of year, on what day. They modify the rolling stock to have the right grab irons, the right, the right reporting marks. Why did it just do that? That's very irritating. Why did it just go? Anyway, okay. But why don't some not model railroad track? Well, I mean model track. So it's not what I'm interested in. Okay, I'll give you that. You can't see the detail from a normal viewing distance. The 3-foot rule. So, how many people out there believe in the 3-foot rule? So since I can't see a show of hands, chime in. Of anybody who's on the call, who believes in the 3-foot rule?
Not me. I have much too close a viewpoint of my tracking details. I can't get away with the 3-foot rule, personally.
Okay. And as you can see, gobbledygook. I don't believe in the 3-foot. Well, even if you apply the 3-foot rule in regards to track, it's gobbledygook.
I don't believe in it myself either. My layout height is 54 inches off the floor, and I'm 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
And I planned the layout height that way because I like the effect of actually viewing trains at eye level. So a lot of my track is right at the edge of the fascia, and it's right there, very visible. So the closer, the more realistic I can make it look, the happier I'll be with it.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because when I first gave this presentation, probably half of the room raised their hands. And well, first they didn't want to do anything, and then I said, "Go ahead, raise your hands. I don't want to do anything to you. Well, I'm gonna point out that that's gobbledygook." And what a lot of people say. Yes, someone say something.
Yes, Andrew Gilmore wants to know, what is the 3-foot rule?
The 3-foot rule is, if you can't see it from 3 feet away, if it looks good from 3 feet away, then that's good enough. The point being, the point being is that what a lot of people will say, and I don't know whether I'm going to get to it later, so if I repeat this, I apologize. But they look at it as, well, you can't see the detail from 3 feet away on the track, so I don't have to put it in. You can't see it, you won't notice it, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, fine. And if you notice this photograph, I'll grant you, in the wintertime, great time to model track, because there's nothing you have to do. You just cover it all up, doesn't matter what you do, you can't see the tie plates, can't see nothing. Can't see nothing, just see snow. But modeling snow provides its own set of problems. I will also concede that due to differences in physics, modeling of truly decrepit track needs to be tempered. Hang on.
Tempered as in?
You have to be careful with it, because you can easily, with the reason why real prototype equipment can operate on the type of track you're looking at, or the type of track, if you've ever seen the YouTube video of the quote-unquote worst track in the United States, the reason why prototype equipment can operate on that is it's heavy, and gravity keeps it on. And as long as you're going 5 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour and carry along re-railing frogs with you everywhere, then you can deal with it. You know, obviously this is not, 50-mile-an-hour track, but, even in modeling speeds, going 5 miles an hour is not particularly easy. And then you have the issues, although they've been in many ways dealt with keep alives and different technologies or battery technology. This whole idea of going really slow up until fairly recently was not 100% possible. Some guys could do it, but it could be hard to do just because of the nature of our needs. The motor, the power plant is on the train, so it's going to keep moving no matter what. It doesn't have to rely on the rails for electrical connectivity. So it's definitely doable in short spurts or in yards and things like that, where you know what's going on. But reality, if you want a good operating railroad, you probably don't want to do a lot of this type of track, the truly decrepit stuff. So, in this photograph provided to me by Trevor Marshall, we would say you're probably looking at this yard from about 300 feet or 250 feet maybe, anyway. And what are some of the things you can see in this photograph?
Is that top plates I'm seeing there?
Besides the trains.
You can see the bolt plates, the fish plates rather. You can see a lot of those details.
Yeah, you can see those details from what would be probably more than 3 feet away. A lot of that has to do with light and things like that. They're naturally highlighted, but you can see all these details at greater than 3 feet away in HO scale. So we'll try that. Maybe that's just a Canadian thing. This is Selkirk Yard in New York. Again, go down the track, you can still see the tie plates at greater than a couple hundred feet. So, or maybe if you wanted to do this.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in there.
Yeah. Why did I not touch that button again? Here we go. So, the actual reality is people try to make themselves feel better, I believe, by saying, oh, you can't see the detail. You can't see the detail because they didn't put it in. The fact of the matter is that from 3 feet away, you can see the detail if you put it in. But people don't want to do it because it's a lot of work. That's what it boils down to, unless you're crazy like me, or others. But the question arises, why would you want to model track as opposed to, many people feel that it's just, something they got to have. They want to have trains. They want to run trains. Well, I have to have track. So I'm kind of stuck with it. But they're perfectly happy throwing down a bunch of flex track and being done with it, because what they really want to do is run trains, as opposed to build models of track. But unlike on our models, there's more track on the prototype than rolling stock. Most of us as modelers probably have enough rolling stock to be able to cover our model railroads at least once. Depending on how large the railroad, I have enough O-scale equipment right now to cover my non-existent Proto 48 layout probably about 20 times. So, and I probably have the same with my N-scale, my N-scale chocolate layout. I have plenty of equipment. And anyway, and as you notice here, when you go rail fanning, if that's something you like to do, you're spending far more time up close and personal with track than you do with the trains, even though the trains are what you're there to see. So it would make sense that you would spend more time modeling track. So, all right, yeah, but you can't see the detail on others, really. So this is, again, Trevor Marshall's layout. This is his S-scale railroad. And this is okay. And he did a nice job with this. With you can see that he's decrepitized some of the ties in the foreground, gouged them up real nice so that it really does look nice. So you can see the detail if you put it there. Oops. This is now becoming aggravating. Let me see. Sorry, this is he's decided to stop functioning. He said. Yeah. Modelers. I'm trying to find my place. I apologize. This is a PowerPoint presentation that's being presented in whatever this is.
Crash.
Yeah. No, not me. I haven't crashed yet, but it's just.
No, your PowerPoint did.
Yeah.
No, it just hit a turnout and took an alternative route.
No, what it did is it didn't add the picture. That's okay. All right. So we'll just try something different. I'll show you photographs of some N scale and my Proto 48 track. This is a photograph of Walpole Yard, Walpole, Massachusetts. Now, there's not a whole lot going on here, but my take on people who are, oh, I don't want to model track really because there's too much of it, and I'm going to spend my entire life modeling track, and that's not really what I want to do. Well, what are some of the details that we notice here?
There used to be a turnout there.
Very good.
Ties are all beat up. Lots of oil on them. See all the tie plates.
Yep. But you notice that a lot of the turnout detail is still there. So the rail braces are still there. And for some reason they kept the curve section of the turnout instead of the straight section. I don't know. But the head block ties are still there. And so for a signature scene in the front of your layout, this would be an interesting thing to do. Detail this up to the nines. Go all out, detailing this one little scene up where, your railroad has taken a turnout out. And detail this up, instead of doing the entire thing. Obviously, you're not going to detail the track in your staging yards, but if there's sections of track where you can only see one side, then only put joint bars on one side, unless you're actually using the joint bars as the joint bars, and then you need them on both sides. But that's another thing entirely. All right, so we should be observant if we're going to be modeling track. We need to be observant. So the devil is in the details, and there's a lot going on in a turnout, generally. And not all turnouts are the same. They have different hardware. You know, if I turn around and look at the switch behind me, if I'm not mistaken, which is what this picture is, no, yeah, it has different um, tie rods. So one of the other things you notice is that a turnout doesn't just have one switch rod. These are actually switch rods. Most turnouts, well, all turnouts have more than one switch rod. Some have 2, some have 3, some have 4 or more, depending on the size of the turnout. That's another detail you can add in. And these are details that I'm making in Proto 48. Here's another little nifty thing that's seen a lot in yards or industrial areas are self-guided frogs. Now, if you're in HO scale or N scale, you're probably not going to be able to use a self-guided frog because it requires scale width wheels. You can do it in Proto 48 or Proto 87 because the wheel heads are scale width, so this works. Where the frog actually holds the wheel in place, you know, as it goes through. The other important thing is the hook tie plates go underneath the just about any frog. There's different styles of guardrails. One's cast, the other one is made out of rail pieces. So, and a great resource to get the drawings for this, because I didn't come down here and take measurements off this. I actually used drawings that were, although I did take measurements on these, I used the drawings from the Pennsylvania Railroad Historical Society has basically scanned in all of the Pennsylvania Railroad's drawings of just about everything on the railroad. Not all of the documents are there, but most of them are. And this is another detail that probably most people don't pay much attention to, which are the rail bonds, which ensures that, you know, the signals are properly passed from one section of rail to the other. No lunatic would actually model that, would they? Yes, he would. So that's on the Proto 48 turnout that I'm working on. And that's a rail bond. And that joint bar, I 3D printed. I designed and 3D printed the joint bar. So this is a small section of a Proto 48 turnout.
Now, if you use rail bonds in N scale, how are you connecting them? Are you going to solder them on, or are you going to glue them on, or?
These are glued.
Okay.
This is glued in O scale. This is O scale. This isn't. That's not. It would be virtual madness in N scale to do it, because in N scale you really can't see it. You can see the joint bars. You can see the tie plates. Although putting in tie plates in N scale would just be, in my opinion, madness over any type of distance. Just that there's so many, and you know, it becomes easier and easier to really detail track up well at the larger the scale is. You know, this is Proto 48, so you can get away with a lot. You could probably see the rail bonds in HO2, depending on how close they were to the track and whether you're going to be taking a lot of photographs. Then obviously the camera will see it. Now, here's another thing. How to up your game when you're doing it. As far as ties go, I agree that I like wooden ties because I've never really been able to get plastic to look like wood. I have a very easy time making wood look like wood. But it's interesting when I see these, you know, people doing track laying tutorials and things, and they advocate using all sorts of different colors on the ties, and really ties are two colors. They're dark brown or white light gray, if you notice those pictures. The newer ties are uniform brown, almost black, and they fade to varying colors of white or light gray. They're not yellow, they're not green, they're brown or gray. It may make people feel better to do all sorts of different colors, but it's not really necessary, in my opinion. If that's what they like to do, then that's fine. But people think it's too complicated. I got to do all these different colors. No, you don't. In reality, most of what I do on my ties are it's kind of a mixture between ebony stain with some brown mixed in, just to get the right, because ebony stain is really too black. It needs to be slightly browner. And then I just use a white pastel pencil on the top of the ties to get that grayed out look. You should also have cracks in almost every tie. If you look at the prototype, even the new ties have cracks. And put at least a little texture on most of the ties, or all of the ties, really. You want to leave some in decent condition, but even main lines have variations. But if you look at this track here, this is just variations of brown and faded brown. Admittedly, if you were in an industrial area where they're spilling chemicals and things like that, you might have variations in the tie color. But really, there's not. From what I've seen, there's not that much. You'll see rust streaks on either side of the rail where tie plates hit, and when rain hits it, the orange will actually spread out from either side of the rail, and that's a good effect to add in as well. But anytime you take pictures, you can see all sorts of. Even here, if you look, I'm so used to using the roller wheel in SolidWorks that I keep trying to zoom in with the rolling wheel, and that's why I keep screwing up these things. Anyway, but as you look at this picture, if you see where my cursor is, you can see right there, there's a tie that's cracked, and there's a piece pushing up a little bit, even though you're going over this at speed. So even with a little bit of a blur, you can see that basically the ties are mostly brown or variations of brown. There's not a lot of color variation in the ties. Now here, this is after a rainstorm and after the ties have been relaid. So this is a section that had been redone along the Middleborough route, and even down the bottom, you can see those are brand new ties. And one of the things you see quite clearly are cracks in the end. So even brand new ties are going to have cracks in them. So don't be afraid to scuff them up. Even well-used main lines will have some ties that are really kind of rotting out from the inside, and there's different ways that you can do that. So this is in a yard. You can see a lot of the details, the hook tie plates, the different type of guardrail, and rail creeper, anti-creepers. I forget what they're called off the top of my head. And just all the different details, and where the tie has been cut horizontally as opposed to crosswise with all the cracks. The point of this picture is just to show you that basically every tie in this picture is cracked in one fashion or another. And so these are Proto 48 ties that I went at with a knife, with an X-Acto knife and a brush. Now, if you really want to go crazy, you can use a welding brush. That'll really dig the ties up real nice. And sometimes you have to do it yourself. These are 3D printed 9-foot long guardrails. There's a lot of tinkering that's involved with this because while Proto 48 is really close to prototype, it isn't exact. So
Now, is this something that you designed then, or?
yeah.
Okay. Ron Kleiss asks, what is your Shapeways account so that they're able to go and look at your 3D available stuff that you have on the market for stuff like this?
Shapeways/shops/bats, BATS, by Jim. Bats by Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't see what's going on, so thank you. Let's see. And these are the adjustable rail braces. So that using these, you need to have the other portion of the switch tie plate array. These work. I started building a turnout using these. They work as advertised. The problem was that the gauge plate was slightly off, so I have to redesign that before I make that totally available. And if you look at the color of these things, this is what I believe is the best all-around, just quick and dirty rail color is Rust-Oleum Camouflage Brown. Quick and dirty, if you can find it. Home Depot used to have it, but it's not a color that's... I bought 2 bottles of it because it was hard to find. So if you find Rust-Oleum Camo Brown, get it. It's the best kind of rusty metal color I found. And this is one of the clips to attach one of the switch rods to the rail, the switch points. And these did get 3D printed too. You also notice those are hook tie plates. Those are code 138 joint bars, and the hook tie plates I make arrays. I offer arrays so that you can do an entire number 10 turnout. And the frog itself is actually, you can get those from Protocraft. I don't do those. I'm going to have to design the manganese self-guarded frog though, because there is no manganese self-guarded frog. They do have a different type, but it's a whale-bound self-guarded frog, and it's not very common. So the detailing options are the Irish track layer. He does the rail anchors, very nice. American switch and signal, he does the frogs and points, but you can also get those from Protocraft, as I noted. Monster Model Works, he does. Jimmy Simmons does great tie plates in O scale, and me, all sorts of stuff. Again, that's Shapeways/shops/bats by Jim. In HO, you have Proto 87 stores and Monster Model Works. Monster Model Works does tie plates. I don't think he does. The rail anchors aren't available anymore, but he does tie plates mainly for use as yard clutter. And I think that's another detail that is sadly underutilized on model railroads, because one thing, if you've ever worked for a railroad in and around a yard, one thing that's omnipresent is tie plates. They're everywhere. And for the longest time, there wasn't an economical source of getting tie plates that you could just pile up as junk. And Jimmy Simmons from Monster Model Works does make a nice, I believe Proto 87 stores does. They make the ones you can hand lay track with. And Jimmy's are more along the lines of using them as just clutter, not per se handling with them. And then N scale, I believe you can get tie plates from Proto 87 stores, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. Yep, one of the slides that that I didn't have, but some things about detailing track is it's easier to detail than cars and locomotives. It's easier to go out and take pictures of it so you know how to do it. Most of the time, to get a good shot, good detail shots of cars and locomotives, you have to trespass to do it. Well, if you live near any railroad tracks and that there are commuter rail services, you can walk right up to the track normally and take photographs. So from a station platform, that's perfectly legal to do it. The other thing is highly detailed track is more robust than highly detailed rolling stock. You run your hand over a section of track that you've put on rail braces and rail anchors and joint bars, those things aren't coming off. I mean, you put them on side pox or CA or anything like that, they're not coming off unless you really want them to come off. You look at a highly detailed boxcar, and you look at it wrong, and you can knock off the syrup steps. You knock it over, you definitely are breaking something. Whereas, you put a lot of work in on your track, and it's going to be there for quite a long time. You're not going to bust it. And it's very satisfying to build track that looks and operates well. One of the few things in the hobby that you can, if you do everything right, use your gauges, and take your time, you will have something that operates well relatively quickly. Unlike a lot of other things where you may, it takes a lot of time and it doesn't operate, and I just find there's a lot of satisfaction in that. The other interesting thing is when you do the more detailed track, it's actually easier to build. Building a Proto 48 turnout, while it takes longer, it's actually easier to build than, say, fast tracks. And I'm not knocking fast tracks, but there is no filing involved when you're building a highly detailed section of track, because there's no you don't have to file for the frogs. There are also other options to get pre-made points, so you don't have to file the points. I love the fast track system, don't get me wrong, and all the track work in the chocolate was made using fast tracks. But if you're thinking, it's going to be harder to do, it takes more time, you have to be more careful, but technically, mechanically, it's easier to do a highly detailed turnout than it is one where you have to build it, where you have to file the points and file the frog and all those sort of things. Those are just my thoughts on it, and anybody has any questions? Here I go.
Scott, hopefully I don't slaughter his last name here. Scott Amoroso has asked, with main lines being code 100 and spurs and sidings being code 83 or 70, how does one join the two tracks? Is shimming required, or do all the major track manufacturers sell transition track?
Well, shimming is required, yes, in one way or another. That's a difficult one to not, to be sitting here, for me to try to explain it to you, and I think maybe some of the guys on the call here. Maybe I can stop sharing the screen so that we're not looking at him.
Yeah, nobody wants to be looking at me.
I don't think I can. Let's see. It has just...
There we go.
There we go. All right, there we go. So, yeah, now my dog has decided that he wants to play. So, yeah, that one's a hard one to describe because there are different ways to do it, but it generally involves soldering. Most of the things that are provided, say, from Atlas, are kind of a pain in the butt. They don't work very well. You're better off. Normally, what I would do is I would take a rail joiner, crush it, and then very carefully solder the smaller rail on top of that rail joiner. And normally that will be about right. But it takes some tinkering. You know, it's not, you know, if you're going to do it right, it takes a little bit of tinkering.
Ron Kleiss also said that they do sell the N-scale frogs and other stuff through the Proto 87 as well.
Oh, an N scale?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
I have a question for you as well. Coloring has been, I agree with you, painting the rail. I've tried a few of the blackening techniques for rail with not the greatest success, so I'm ultimately going to end up just painting the rail. However, I've had a hard time getting the right color for the detail parts. So I use the Proto 87 tie plates and switch detail parts and such. And using a blackening chemical like Blacken It or one of those from Micro Mark that I ordered, something different, it's too black for the brown color that I'm trying to recreate. And even after I go back and lay rust weathering powders on it, they still kind of pop as being too black. So those seem to be hard to paint and still have an adhesive source so you can glue them to it. But I would love to color them before I apply them to the ties and the glue to it. Do you have any kind of mechanism or a chemical process that you know of that will keep them, that will let me color those etched metal parts and still be able to adhere to them?
Well, I'd probably paint them. If it were me, I would paint them, and I would mix. I would mix roof brown. Roof brown is normally a good color. I don't like rail brown. Rail brown's too green to me. Again, I mean, I would just spray bomb it with that Rust-Oleum camouflage brown. I'd spray bomb everything with that, and then go back and highlight things.
So what about, and you did that on Mike Rose's layout. I'd seen some pictures of that where you'd use the Proto 87 parts, and the color looked really nice on those. Did you still use a contact adhesive to glue the rail to the plates and such? So I'm going to use Cypox to glue the plates to the ties. Yep. And but I was talking to Mike Rose, and he suggested that the Cypox had not worked for you guys using glue the rail to the tie plates, that you guys would still use the contact adhesive. Do you think that would still hold up even if you painted them?
Oh, I mean, what you mean? Yeah, after you've interesting. See, I would do a lot of things differently than what I did with Mike Rose's. He painted everything, not me. But yeah, we use contact cement, barge cement, actually, with the plastic ties. We use barge cement. I wasn't overly impressed with that. You can't use Cypox because Cypox is too brittle. And so when the rail expands and contracts due to weather, it's going to break the bond. That's why you're better off really spiking it if you can. Use the Proto 87 spikes. They're ridiculously sharp. They'll go through just about anything. Yeah. I prefer a mechanical connection myself. I prefer spiking everything if at all possible. I'm not really enamored with gluing everything together.
Oh, I agree, and I'm definitely going to spike. But what I would like to do, and I'll take your suggestion on what to do with this, is that I mean to spike, because the Proto 87 tie plates have that spike detail already built into them, so you don't have to spike every rail. They'll have all the detail like you would have to with Proto 48, for example. But I mean to spike every so many rails. But I was thinking that I would use the contact cement also to keep the ties, I guess. This is thinking backwards to the way gravity is going to work, but to keep the ties up against the rail using contact cement, and then spiking that assembly down as if it were sectional or flex track once it's ready.
That would probably work, because you're not using that as the means to hold everything together. You're just kind of holding the ties in place. So.
And you think I'd get away with painting them, and that the contact cement would still hold those components together, even if they were spray painted first?
Probably. But I mean, I don't know if you're going to be spray painting the underside of the rail anyway, so that's not going to be an issue. But the
No, just the top of the tie plates and then the sides of the rail. But my concern was the bottom of the bottom of the rail, even being an exposed metal, and then the top of the tie plates would have that paint on it. And I was thinking that you would barge cement that to it, and that it may have a tendency to separate the paint.
well,
I mean, it's a layer of paint. So.
one of the other things you could do is use Plyo-Bond, which is what you use with use Plyo-Bond, and then you heat it. So don't paint the rail. You know, you put the Plyo-Bond, you let it dry, you put it on both surfaces, you let it dry, and then you hit it with the soldering iron, and that sets it. And that's a really strong bond. I don't know how it would react with paint because I've never done that.
No, but if it bubbled the paint a little bit of touch-up of paint wouldn't hurt anything. It's having to paint all of it and not get it on the ties that's the problem. But having to touch up a few spots, that's no big deal. So, and Proto 87 actually recommends Plyo-Bond, and that they sell it. So, so it's not against recommendation. I'd seen a few other people who had less than stellar results with Plyo-Bond, and I had originally thought I would definitely go with the barge cement thinned with MEK. But I was concerned about the build process, you know, how to put things together and not have to paint everything after the fact, which seemed like it would be impossible.
Yeah, I mean, again, if it were me, I'd put everything together and then spray bomb it. Now, one of the things about painting is you have to paint it more than once. You can't just shoot it one time, because what happens is the paint doesn't adhere to the side of the rail, and it pulls up onto the base of the rail. And so, and I noticed this at Mike Confalone's. Mike Confalone looks great in video and everything, but when you get up close and personal, and I do this to everybody's track, everybody, doesn't matter where I go, I do an examination of the track. I may not tell them that I'm doing it, but I always do, anywhere I go. Just understand that if I ever visit your layout, I'm looking at your track. First and foremost, that's for what I do. And so when I looked at the side of his rail, because I was wondering, how does he get the paint to stick on this stuff? And when I looked at his rail, his eyesight isn't very good, and he couldn't see it. He couldn't see that there's a slight silver sheen to the side of his rails, because he only hit it with one coat. I find the same thing happens. It doesn't matter, you know, the paint pens and all that other stuff. You always have to do it more than once. And I think, you know, if you get one base color and then do variations to that, at least everything, you know, has kind of a family appearance. And then if you want to go back and fade the ties and, you know, change colors here and there, then that's not a problem. And it's such a great color.
What do you think about it? Well, since you've seen Mike Confalone's layout, do you like the weathering powders that he uses? They look really good in video and photo. They look as good in person, that dry pigment for recreating the rust.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a good effect?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. I do a lot of that, too. You know, when I've just gotten, you know, used to, you know, when I'm doing parts and rail and stuff like that, it worked great on my, on one of the, I spray painted the under frame parts of some Proto 48 stuff that I'm working on, that I printed. I 3D printed it, and I was taking a ton of time painting it, brush painting it, and then I said, what the heck am I doing this for? Just, oh, it's done.
Yeah, you spend so much time getting the wood to look right when you pre-stain the wood and scratch and mar the wood that I'm so scared of hitting it with a paintbrush, you know, after the fact. So it seems like painting the materials ahead of time or trying to color them ahead of time would reduce my fear factor of damaging the wood that I spend so much time on.
Well, if you're using wood ties, then you could possibly, you know, go with stain for the ties, and then run the brush along the tie plates. But I don't know. I haven't really had the issues of that paint covering up stuff. Even though you have to put quite a bit of paint on there, I haven't noticed that it's really messed anything up with the tie.
Since we're on the subject, Robert Olson asks if using wood for ties or wooden trestle bridges, etc., paint or stain. If you do use stain, do you mix your own or purchase some?
Purchase it. I'm lazy.
And what kind of stains do you normally go ahead and get?
I normally use, what is it? The base color is Minwax Ebony, and then I'll add colors to it as I'll hit everything with Minwax Ebony stain, and then I'll go back over it with a more brownish stain because ebony is too dark. It's not brown enough. So it's not brown enough. It's not red enough. So I find that you just need to hit it again because it's just way too dark. Even though if you're, it's even too dark for brand new ties, in my opinion. But I just use Minwax Ebony as the base color for most stuff.
Do you mix those stains, or do you use them in layers? Do you put the ebony down and then try to add brown on top, or you just mix a couple stains?
Yeah, no, you can't really do that.
Layers.
Well, yeah, you do layers. So you like washes. It's just because they don't mix. Unless you're getting a brown Minwax stain to mix with the ebony, then that might work. But that's not what I'm doing.
Right.
I am viciously lazy. So, if it gets, then one could say, why are you spending all this time 3D designing stuff? Well, because that's what I like to do. So, what can I say?
I'd like to interrupt here for a minute, just as a little reminder. It's now 10 o'clock. We're halfway through the show. For all the viewers, go and keep checking on YouTubeModelBuilders.com for all the latest news and schedule on info for the live show hosted by Big Bill Graham, which is once a month. The eMag, which is a bi-monthly, and viewers can sign up for a subscription, link to be emailed to you. Plus, the eMag is always looking for model railroaders to send in articles and pictures to be published. Don't forget about the new improved presentations with Geno, Barry, Mike, and MRR Tech shows newly added to the normal moderated presentations with Dude and Troy. Plus, don't forget about the Thursday night general hangouts with Johnny Rev of the Southeast Rails as well. If you are painting an N scale or detailing your N scale track, as far as colors are concerned, what would you use for your N scale? Because I'm running microengineering code 55, and I've been using a railroad tie brown for the ties, and actually getting that grayish white color back up out of them by actually applying a little bit of alcohol to certain ties to actually go ahead and bring the lightness back up out of them again. Is there anything more I can do with that?
Again, what I did on the chocolate is I spray bombed it with that color. I mean, quite literally is the perfect color. And then I'm going back with a white pastel pencil to fade the ties.
Okay.
So it's very, very uncomplicated. Let me see if I could. Where did I camp? Oh. All right. Let's see.
Is that a chalk or a oil-based pastel pencil you're using?
I don't know. Honestly, it's something I went to the craft store and got one. And of course, I don't have any photographs of the paint color. But,
well, your Blogspot page shows the results. It doesn't show that pencil, I don't think, and that page it hasn't been updated in a long time. But it does have the technique using the pastel pencil, or at least the end result of the track work. Some good pictures for everybody there.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, that's the other end scale. I want to do that. All right. So, let's see. We'll share. These are not per se the greatest photographs, but complicated. What? I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Here. All right. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So, for instance, these the decrepit ties. This is ebony stain, and then the white pastel pencil on them. The more, the better looking ones on the other side are, I believe that's ebony with the brown mixed in. And with the Proto 48, to get the hollowed out rotting tie look, I drilled a hole lengthwise in the tie and then dug it out. You can do that at N scale by taking a razor saw on the underside of the tie and basically making the tie a U channel, and then you're able to dig out the top and make, which you could do also in HO scale. You could probably run a drill in HO scale as opposed to that. And these were done, because they were particularly decrepit, these were done with a welding brush.
They look great.
Thank you.
Now, what about as far as the color of the rail, then as far as the size of the rail in N scale? Would you hand paint those, or?
Spray bomb. I'm totally in the, at least to begin with, I'm totally in the camp of the Rust-Oleum camo brown paint. And so here you can see the side of the ties that have been destroyed. And then another important detail that most people don't model is leaves. Omnipresent. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is, really. So, there's way more leaves on either side of the track than there is just about anything else. Even in the summertime, bunched up on either side.
Yes, I agree. Leaves, papers, sometimes occasional soda can.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here is a mixture of, you've got rail anchors. These are, I think, Grant Line tie plates. And I don't really like them in comparison to others, either my own tie plates or Jimmy Simmons, Monster Model Works, is the holes in the tie plates are too large. Relatively speaking. They don't look this way when they're laid down, really, but when you look at them, otherwise they are. Those are, I think, Grant Line joint bars. And the leaves are actually little bits of cigar leaves that I ripped up manually because they're the right color. Real leaves aren't the right color.
Yeah, they look good. Sean Hendricks asks, for laying down track, which is better to use, cork or foam roadbed? What is the best way to lay track down, glue or nailed?
Yes. There is no best way. It depends on whatever works for you. So in the case of what I'm doing in Proto, if you're going to hand lay, Homosote is the best because it holds the spike the best. If you're going to hand lay with spikes, if you're going to hand lay with spikes, Homosote is probably the best. The next is cork, and finally foam. Foam is fine if you're doing flex track. Not a problem with it. Some people really like it. I'm not really a fan of laying track on the 2-inch insulating foam, but if you're talking about the stuff from Woodland Scenics, yeah, that's fine. But the insulating foam, I'm not really a fan of that.
Also, I noticed you, and I read about something where you had individually cut the 39-foot lengths of
Yes.
rail, which got away with you because you're doing battery power and not worried about the electrical contacts.
Right.
I am not using rail joiners, and am using the. I'm ending my rails on a tie, so I can glue both sides together and on a tie, and insulating between them with a piece of clear acetate, and using the joint bars to hide that. Have you found a good technique for scoring the top of the rail so that you can recreate or emulate that 39-foot section without having to have small 5-inch lengths of track in HO scale? So I want it to be electrically conductive for the 36 inch, but not beyond. But a saw, for example, leaves way too deep and way too wide of a gap.
Yep, you can use an X-Acto knife, just the number 11 blade, score the top, and then, believe it or not, if you get a little bit of paint on the tip of the blade and then drag it over that gap, you'll shadow the gap. So all you got to do, and then as you look down the rail, you'll see that gap. If you didn't even want to go that far, because with nickel silver rail, the steel blade will cut into it. You don't want a huge gouge, and it's going to be a small cut. And particularly if you highlight it or shadow it with a little bit of black paint or some dark colored paint. It doesn't need to be black. And it doesn't take a lot of paint. You just drag it over, and the paint will naturally fill in that gap. And then that will give you the joint. Yeah, this is the extent of my quote unquote proto 48 layout. That's the extent of it right there.
And it took 9 years to lay the track. No, it
wasn't that bad. Almost, but not that bad. Let's see.
That's most people's excuse for not handling is the time consuming. But I find I get in a kind of a pattern, and it's not as fast as flex track, but it's not 20 times as slow. You kind of get in rhythm.
Right. Let's see. And then, so this is the first piece of track I did. I think. Well, there you go. There's the pastel pencil right there.
Yeah.
In that photo.
That's beautiful, and you've got those. Well, you probably are using individual sections of rail, like you've talked about, but those score marks on the tops of the rail are.
No, that's a score mark.
Yeah.
That's actually a cut. That's a cut in the rail. So with Proto 48 in particular, you really actually have to cut through the head of the rail. You can leave the bottom of the rail, but you've got to cut through the head of the rail because you can see it.
Sure.
HO scale doesn't make as much of a difference. Let's see.
So in N scale, you just go ahead and score the top of the rail, then highlight it with a black or a rust color or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that scoring the tops of the rail and then painting the sides of the rail, there will probably be enough of that paint leaches into that gap. I'm going to try it first. And then once I wipe the top of the rail off with a little piece of Homosote, I bet that it leaves that mark visible.
Now, one of the things that I have a problem with, and you can see here that I'm laying the track down in the 39-foot sections, and what I was able to get Tim Morris from Fast Tracks to do was to make me Proto 48 sweepsticks. What the sweepstick is designed to do is to help you lay either flex track or track in a particular radii. He doesn't tout them as being track gauges. However, they are. They're laser cut. You can use them for that. He will never tell you that you can, because people will complain and say you cannot use wood for a track gauge. You must use metal. However, it's plywood. It's very sturdy. Now one can say, what am I doing with the silly ties on top? of that sweepstick. There's two reasons for it. One, particularly in O scale, it wouldn't happen in HO, is what will happen with this is the sweepstick would fall in between the webs of the rail, and then as you brought the rail in, it would actually narrow the track gauge. So to make sure that the track gauge stays correct, you glue these ties on the top of the sweepstick to make sure that the sweepstick doesn't fall in between the ties. The other thing that it does is one of the things that I have a bad habit of doing, and I did in this section of track, I actually had to pull it up and relay it, is I have a habit of laying the track too far to one side on the ties. And so it looks fine from the side that you're spiking it, but if you ever look at it from the top, it just looks stupid. So what the ties are centered on the sweepstick. So what this allows me to do around a curve is to make sure that the track stays centered on the ties. Even though you notice I have variation in the ties, slight variation in the location of the ties, which is another detail that even on mainline track, the ties are not perfectly straight in line. They're slightly off side to side. Yeah, this helps you to be able to make sure that this stays in the center of the ties as you're laying the track. And so that's a picture about the sweepsticks.
Now, when you hand laid your ties, did you make a jig or anything to go ahead and?
I did. I handmade one, but you can also buy them from Fast Tracks. He has 3 different styles. 3 different styles. So let's see. Just a difference in, and ballast isn't always the same either. That's another thing that you can pay attention to, the details of the ballast. You know, even from plate, you know, from section to section, they may have dumped out a section, or they may be covering over. You know, they may be covering an old section of ballast, so there's different colors of ballast wherever. And that's one of the old sections of my. You can see where I hand laid wood ties on foam. I just wasn't really happy with that. You can't really spike into it; it doesn't work. It works, but not. You won't be happy with it. And that shows you the profile of Proto 48 wheel sets. That's the difference between. That's actually the same. Proto 48 wheels actually have HO scale flanges on an O scale wheel, is what it is. It's the same as the RP25. The RP25 standard. Oops. Let's see. And let's see. And where is it? Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I want to make a comment that I now truly hate all my track work. Thank you.
No problem. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
That's a problem with seeing anything super detailed. You will always see the flaws in it if you don't do it yourself. That's what destroyed me on hand-laid track a decade ago, and I've never been able to look at flex track the same. All right, one question.
Here's one of the things about like Proto 48. This is an Atlas boxcar that I converted nominally to Proto 48. So these are Proto 48 wheel sets. The trucks I had to change over. That's a knuckle coupler. If you notice, the cut lever works. It actually, you can pull the pin with the cut lever. And this is an operating cushion underframe. Well, not the underframe. The underframe doesn't cushion, but the coupler cushion. So that moves in and out. And you know, the interesting thing about the grab irons is the grab irons are in fact scale size. That's one of the things you can do in O scale is you can turn those things into, they're actually 5/8 around, and you can do really nice things with essentially an out of the box ready to run car, but it takes a long time to get to that point.
Jim, to answer your, not to interrupt anything here, but to answer your comment, Jim, is at any time in your layout, if you want to start laying hand track, you can take up quite a bit of the flex track and start laying hand track. You can replace that at any time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, dude.
Or just go ahead and do small sections of it at a time.
Yeah,
Right.
just doing small sections of it. That's what I meant. You know, and get the feel of it. You're a beginner. I mean, I don't lay. I mean, I've been doing layouts for quite some time, for many years, and I haven't started. I mean, I always tell myself that I want to start hand laying track, but here it is. I still haven't yet.
At
Well,
least
my thoughts was I was wondering if I could get some rail joiners and tie. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology, but that little plate that connects the two rails and some tie plates and just kind of glue them in and just to kind of give it more of a better visual effect.
We
Without
probably
actually,
don't need the tie plates, Jim, because you've got flex track or sectional track that already has it molded in. You just might
Right.
want to work on painting it to actually bring it out and make it pop, throw some rust paint on them. But the actual fish plates or the joint bars, you can order a pack of those. I got a pack laying here somewhere, and they're basically paper, and they're a little bit of Cypox or CA glue, and stick them on there, man, and they make a big difference.
you say they're paper.
The ones I got now, there's from Proto 87. They are etched. I think I ordered a bunch of them, but they haven't come in yet. That's one thing. If you order from Proto 87, they're awesome, great guys, really helpful, easy to email with. Slow as the day is long in shipping, but from Precision Design or something like that, they manufacture them in a resin composite. They call it resin composite. I call it paper, but it's fine.
That's Proto 87, you said?
Now, the paper ones come from a company called Precision Design Company. Actually, I can tell you right here. Yeah, Precision Design Company. They make them in that resin composite paper, and I wanted those because they're not electrically conductive, and I'm using them to essentially kind of build a rail joiner, so to speak, out of components. So I wanted them for that purpose. However, I also ordered a bunch from Proto 87, and they are an etched metal material, so they would be electrically conductive, at least to some degree.
Let's see, I'm trying to find more. So
Jim, do you hand lay your N scale track too then?
yes.
And with your handling, what all do you use for that? Do you use PCB bars then?
Yeah, it was all done with fast tracks.
Okay, so you just go down so far and put so many ties in, and then the rest would be all wood then, correct?
I did exactly. I used a straight section. You solder in one rail, and that you use that as flex track, and then use that for flex track, and then I used his ties as well, because let's see. So here's the Proto 48 turnout as I was putting it together. Those are my the hook tie plates are underneath the frog, and those are my 3D printed what do you call those? Guardrails.
The guardrails.
Yeah. And that's
So you mentioned doing a single rail and using this flex track, and I've also thought about doing the same thing. Do you think that would hold up if you, like we talked about, using the bars and gluing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because all mine, Mine are you put it down and then you solder the rail in place on the other side. So so it's going to hold together, and then all of the ties I fed them in underneath, and then I was using the plyo bond to hold everything together. Now this is a 3D printed throw rod, switch rod with the clip. And the reason for this little piece of metal is this thing is horribly brittle. It's actually, you can bend it like a piece of paper. So what I did is I Cypoxed this piece of piano wire on underneath. And so that's what it looks like.
Wow.
And that color is the that's the Rust-Oleum brown. That color that's on all the switch parts. That's another shade. You just barely can see the piano wire underneath there.
No, but that does it, and that makes it really easy to hook a switch machine to it. Also, it gives you something structural to mount to.
Right. See, the problem here, there's a couple of issues with this turnout that I can see, but the gauge plate is what the issue is. It's the gauge plate. I did it to, I designed it to the prototypical, the prototype's dimension, and that doesn't work. So I have to redraw it. Just another detail of greaser. What I'm trying to do is find some pictures of the N scale track. I know I've got them in here somewhere. So many photos.
So then after you ballast, do you add the detail of grease and oil and all that other stuff?
In time, yeah.
Ask him about how he adheres his ballast. That's pretty interesting material.
Well, that's one way to do it. I don't know whether I will continue doing it that way, but that's one way to do it. It works. What it seems to do is it works in O scale, because what I was doing in O scale, and this is important. That's what happens when you hand lay a lot of track with individual tie plates.
Yourself's not normal?
What?
That would be me.
Yeah. So I'm special.
So what, you use some kind of floor wax? Isn't that what you're using?
Future floor wax.
Future.
And future floor wax. I guess it's called Pledge with Future Shine or something silly.
And it's not shiny. You don't have to go back and dull coat or matte medium it or something.
No. No. It will be if you continue to flow it in.
Sure.
If you continue to flow the future into the ballast, it will, in time, get shiny. But if you here we go. All right, this is an N scale turnout. So you can see how I kind of did a little bit of work on the ties so they're not all perfect. And then I use Z-scale. I use Z-scale PC board ties and then filed them even thinner as the switch rods.
Okay.
And when you're soldering the right way, to get those in takes about a second. It's harder to hold them there than it is to actually solder it in place.
Especially go and get them nice and parallel with the remaining of the ties sitting there.
Right. Now you have to get something in underneath it to hold it up, because it's a lot narrow. It's a lot thinner than the N scale ties, but
The PC guys don't stand out as bad as I thought they would, especially not in N-scale anyway. I can
Right.
see it that way.
But let's see. So just to give you an idea of how the thing comes together. So this is the N scale that's being laid on top of the Google Maps printout.
That's awesome.
You know, I never thought of doing that. When you printed that off, what ratio did you use?
You have to scale the drawing, and then you scale the picture so that 1:1 is actually N scale.
Okay.
So there's no compression with this. This is absolutely 100%.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Now, one of the benefits is, so there's a curved crossing right here in the prototype. I actually used the tie locations on the prototype crossing to build the model.
Wow. Instant scenery, too.
Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons why I stopped. I kind of lost interest, is because this, I'm not a structure builder per se, and there's something I want to do, and I didn't want to learn a new program to build these buildings because they're modern buildings. I really wanted to use Lance Minheim's method of printing out the sides and just putting it on pieces of wood, essentially, because they're just flat warehouse buildings. So, I wish that was not so blurry. There we go. And the way this works is you actually lay one path in, and then the other way you cut in. Instead of trying to assemble the whole thing from pieces, it's actually you lay one side and then cut the gaps to lay the other side. Like that.
Yep. All in place.
Yeah. You just have to be real careful with N scale rail because you'll cut through it in like a second and a half.
Yeah, that was my problem when I was building my crossing. Then I went to custom building the whole thing with just the file, basically.
Yeah, I was able to get another. I really. That's better. I got a really cool file that's good for. But I don't have it handy here. But it's good for getting in the gaps and everything. It's Fast Track sells it, and I don't remember what it's called, but it's very very narrow. But it's kind of looks like a cricket bat is what it looks like, but it's a file.
And Fast Track sells those?
Yes.
I'll have to jump up on there and check that out.
And if you can ever find these, which I doubt because I don't think they carry them anymore, these were the greatest. The pliers, not so much, but the rail nipper, the flush cut pliers, are just awesome. So this, and you can get them from Crescent, but the Crescent ones are great flush cut pliers, but they're not really great for doing rail. They're not as robust as the Zurons, but the Crescent ones you get from Home Depot are the best hand lay, hand spiking pliers you'll ever find. This is one of the buildings in the chocolate. This is what I'm talking about. It's just a plain old, It's amazing that this stinking 86-foot long boxcar comes into this little, in the middle of, this little place in Mansfield, Massachusetts. But yeah, that's me. Uniform. Let's see. Get rid of that. There you go. None of that foolishness. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. And Let's see if there's anything good. And that's Mike Confalone's layout.
Yeah, one of my favorites. I really like his work.
Yeah.
I mean, he uses flex track, but other than that, I love the scenery and such.
Oh, it's great. You know what? He got something. You know, if you want an operating model railroad that's up and running quick, that you can't really complain too much about using microengineering flex track and microengineering switches. I mean, it's a great option.
Except that they make a number 6 left and a number 6 right, and that's
right.
it.
Yes. If you want, you know, other turnout, I mean, if you want a number 10, guess what? You're going to have to hand lay it or buy Walthers, and I'm not overly keen on Walthers.
No.
Shinohara, but, you know, they're okay.
And Picos operate pretty well, but look horrible.
The Code 83 ones are okay. The Code 100 ones, I would agree.
Tillich makes some nice long turnouts, and they are not hinged. So the switch rails are one straight long piece from the frog up to the point.
Who is that?
Tillich. Tillig.
RG. And they are American prototype, not the bolt plates. They're traditional American spike rail detailing.
It's a European prototype, but the bolts are so small
that you can't tell. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
They also offer kits for somewhat flexible turnouts. So you get everything, it's a straight line, but they are bendable. So if you need a slight curve in a turnout and not really a curved turnout, you can adjust the slide radius to those kits.
I have other pictures of the N scale. I have lots and lots of pictures of prototype boxcars, which I do not suggest anyone go measure like I do. I can sort of get away with it until the train master shows up. Let's see. And the train master gets cranky. What are you doing here? Trying to find that. Okay.
Real quick, back on gluing your ballast. Everything I've read says use 50-50 white glue and water with some alcohol. What possessed you and got you interested into using floor wax?
Well, okay, that's a good way to get me back on track here. Future floor wax, I read it somewhere that the British uses it as a ballast bonding agent. What it does is you don't need to pre-wet the ballast, even the Woodland Scenics. You don't need to pre-wet it. It will wick into the ballast without any pre-wetting. It will also bond it. Now, the drawback to Future is not that it's shiny, because I can fill up O-scale ballast and it will not be shiny. Now, once it dries and I flow in another bunch of Future, then it will start to get shiny, but not really. You really would have to put a lot of coats into the ballast for it to get truly shiny, like it was, wet after a rainstorm. And so you don't really have to worry about that. What I found though in HO scale, it's not as effective, and the reason it is because Future sticks real well to itself. It doesn't really stick well to anything else. So because of the less amount that you or the lesser amount that you would flow into HO scale ballast, it doesn't work as well. Now, your mileage may vary. You could try it and it would work great. But Mike Rose used some, and if it's on a section of railroad that's never going to move, then probably it's never going to be an issue. Or if you wanted to make it look like it had rained, then that might be something you do. Or if you seal some section and you wanted to use it and make it look like there was a puddle somewhere, that would work great, I think. But in an O scale, it worked great. HO scale, I haven't noticed an issue in N scale, but I haven't gone back to that section where I laid down the ballast to see how well it stuck. So, but with Mike Rose, he had some issues with the ballast coming back up. It would stay for a while, but then would come back up. So, again, he may not have used as much future as I do, so that may have been the issue. But the thing about it is you don't have to pre-wet it to stick down your ballast. It's one step.
Now, how thick is that future wax? Is it like a watery base? Is it, I don't know. I've never seen it, I guess.
It looks like water. It's probably about the consistency of maple syrup, but clear.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't Conflone using unsanded grout that had the adhesive in there? So I mean, he might have been using some white glue, but he is talking about it being a little more rubbery. Was that him that was that did that?
I don't know. Could be. Sounds like something he'd do.
Yeah, it's some weird techniques, but I like having a little bit of flexibility. Seemed to be pretty good. What I've had in layouts that lasted for a long period of time is that the white glue, the standard white glue method, could get brittle over time for me. So I was thinking I would use matte medium this time because I'd heard more about it being a little bit more rubbery when dry. But I seen something that Mike Conflone had done using. He's using the granite dust, which is what I'm going to use as well. But that he had put some white unsanded grout in it for coloring, but that it also had the bonding agent, which has that slight rubbery flexibility as well, which I still think you'd have to use glue additionally.
I mean, white glue works great. I've used matte medium too, and it works great. I just tried the future, and I was hot and bothered on it for a while, and it's great. And I have a bunch of eyedropper bottles that works great for because I do small sections at a time. I've got ADD, so I can't concentrate on things for very long. Except for 3D modeling, I can spend a lot of time doing that.
Well, those Europeans do have a few and a good idea every now and then, but we can't say that with Sven listening. So, but they do have a good idea from time to time.
I've seen Sven's modeling, and I ain't gonna argue with it.
Not at all. And actually, some European, a lot of ways, some incredible modeling coming out of European modelers.
I mean, that's one nice thing about the internet is now we can see it.
Yes. Yeah, I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and like military modeling. 10 years ago, I would have never looked at a tank model somewhere, but I spend a lot of time looking at weathering techniques. Those guys are on top of it.
Yeah, an interesting resource is the Weathering magazine. Mainly they're military modelers, and they have different. And it's an electronic magazine. It's very hard to get I don't even think you can get the paper ones anymore. You can only get the electronic ones. And they have an entire issue just on rust, another issue just on dust, another issue just on chipping,
Yeah, or a 45-minute YouTube video on how to get grass to impregnate into mud. And it's actually pretty interesting. So
yeah, I haven't looked at a lot of the YouTube stuff on it. It's like, who needs to model anymore? Just watch other people do it, right?
Yeah, there's something gratifying about it.
I know. I make a joke.
Absolutely. Well, I've been watching it for years and years. I got tired of that and started building again, but I spent a long time without a layout.
Mhm.
Am I correct that the prototype rail is 39-foot long sections?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Hmm.
Seems like there's some narrow gauge that did it differently or something, but
It
I'm not sure
probably
about
had to do with the length of their
flat car.
the flat cars and gondolas, because that was what it was. The gondolas at the time were 40 feet long, so they made the rail 39 feet long so it would fit. Pretty basic. Like
So
the
now I'm going to scratch every 39 inches of my rail off-centered one side from the other.
yep.
Yep.
Add little fish plates with plastic flex track. I mean, I don't know. I guess you can square that a little bit to make it look a little weathered.
Yep,
Like you were
absolutely.
doing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can dig up the top of the ties with my suggestion whenever you're going to dig up the ties is go at it a little bit with an X-Acto knife, and then you can buy them for like $3. You buy 3 of the little brushes from Home Depot, the welding brushes, the little ones. They're stainless steel or brass. I kind of like the stainless steel one better. They seem to hold up better. And then go at the top of the ties. You're not gonna hurt the track. And you use an Atlas track.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not gonna hurt it. You're not gonna hurt it at all.
Now, would you do the same for N scale too,
Oh yeah.
with a microengineering rail?
Yep. And you could probably do the same thing like I did with the wood ties. You could use if you're really crazy, you could go at the underside of the ties with a razor saw, make it a U channel, and then you could hollow out the tie up from the top with an X-Acto knife.
Now, what if the track is already installed? Could you just dig it out with the X-Acto knife, or?
Well, I mean, you can put in the cracks. You can put in the cracks in the tops of the ties. That's not a problem. For it to really do the decrepit ties, you have to go from underneath. At least in N scale, the only way you're really going to be able to do that and make it look right and make it not look like you're digging from the top. See, that's the thing is if you dig from the top, trying to make a decrepit tie, it's going to look like you dug from the top. And while that occurs on occasion, generally they rot from the inside. And so they're hollow, and you can just see the top of it. You can see a hole in the top of the tie, and underneath is hollow. A wonderful place for yellow jackets to sit. How do I know that? Fortunately, I didn't get assaulted by them. I found them before I stepped on the tie. But yeah, they hollow up. They rot from the inside of the tie. So if you just dig from the top, every once in a while, that's not a problem. And the cracks are okay. The cracks, that's fine to do that. But if you're gonna hollow out a tie and you want it to look rotten, it's better if you can, you hollow out the bottom of the tie and then so it looks like there's a hole in the tie. So like it's the only way you're gonna make the tie look hollow. That's the point. It's a particular effect, and I don't know how crazy you want to be in N scale. I did that once, and I was to the point of I wanted hollowed out ties where the hollowed out ties were, because I can go to the chocolate. It's 15 minutes from my house, so I did one hollowed out tie on the chocolate just to prove that it could be done, because people say, oh, you can't do that in N scale, you won't be able to see it. Aha, yes you can. And then when I went over to the chocolate to look, the one place that I put a hollowed out tie is the one place in the chocolate where they put in new ties. But I mean, there's a detail where you can tell where they derailed, and so there's a gouge running along about 30 or 40 ties. That would be another thing, to try to model. Definitely something, to do in a yard or somewhere else. Another thing with the tie plate detail, say, you have older ties, and you want to make the impression that there's going to be a tie gang that's going to come out and replace a bunch of ties. You put a couple of tie plates on each tie in the center, on each tie for a certain distance, and that's where the tie gang is going to come in and replace ties. It's another little detail. Anything else? See, I told you I could blather on about nothing for an hour for 2 hours.
Well, I think that it wasn't quite blabbling or babbling, as you would say.
Uh-huh.
I think you did a great show. I'd like to thank you for coming on here. This has been greatly appreciated.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is there any other questions anybody else has?
Happy to be of service.
No, I want to thank you for coming, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and hated it at the same time.
If it makes you feel any better, if you listen to the Model Railroad Hobbyist podcast, where we had on Ken Patterson, and his modeling is absolutely gorgeous. He was moaning about, oh man, now I'm going to have to go and detail all my track. What are you doing? So he said the same thing to me, and that was merciless. He's like, oh, you see, I'm doing this yard thing, and it's going to be, I say, see, there's all the more reason to detail your track. Will you stop already?
He barely has. The last video I seen of some of his work, he had went and put fish plates on rails, so apparently you get a real effect.
Yeah. His
modeling is exceptional, though.
His stuff is just absolutely. Some of his stories are great about how Walters got back to him about one of their the covers, and they said you need to make this thing look less real.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It looks too much like the real thing. You have to make it look more like a model. We don't want to scare people away. What? But just getting back to it, it's just you don't have to go crazy. Pick a signature scene that's in the front of the layout and do that up. And then if you want to go back and replace stuff later, my biggest suggestion is, if you can standardize on a particular turnout, get a fast tracks minimum point form tool and start hand laying your turnouts that way. Because that's a great system. Huh?
You prefer those versus the Proto 87 manganese frogs? I thought I would use those. I'm not against building them from scratch, but the manganese ones with the details on them look pretty awesome.
They do. It depends on what you're going for, and not everybody is really into that. And the one thing I will say about the fast tracks is the fast tracks turnouts are the only turnouts on the market that are 100% NMRA compliant. That being said, Mike Rose does have several turnouts that, if you look at Mike Rose's the Mahoopany area, all of that was hand laid by me, and they're hand laid in place. I used Templot and made that curved yard ladder. And now there's a twisted program for you. One heck of a learning curve on that puppy. Magnificent program, does very, very powerful, but one heck of a learning curve.
What's that called?
Templot.
Templot.
Templot. Templot. It is done by a British gentleman. Used to have to. I actually paid for it. Now it's free. But it allows you to. It's not a track design program. It's a hand laying program. So.
That thinner.
Yeah, it allows you to put together sections so that you can print them out and then hand lay it directly on the printout. So there's such flexibility in that. It's geared kind of towards British modelers where they have curved frogs and stuff, but there's settings in there so that you can draw things in N scale, you can draw them in HO, you can draw them in Proto 48, O scale, anything. I mean, it's just an incredibly powerful program. And my suggestion is you watch the tutorials. If you're interested in it, you watch the tutorials. The bad thing is, at the time that I was using the program, is the tutorials are on versions of the program that are old, and they changed a lot of the names of the commands because it's all command based. It's not, you use the mouse, but not, it's, yeah, it's hard to describe until you see it. It's, you know, but the videos were great. They're really great on how to use the program, but it's just a lot of people look at it and are like,
Well, I'd like to be able to build my templates as a single piece. Right now, I've taken a bunch of templates, some from Fast Tracks, most from Fast Tracks, a few from Proto 87, printed them out one-to-one, took scissors and tape like I'm cutting film in the 1920s, and made a bunch of unusual templates that way that are surely less than perfect.
Yeah, if you use Template, you could print the whole thing out at once. And the interesting thing is it will dynamically tell you the size of everything that you're doing. So, for instance, if you know the radii of both leads of a particular switch, you can you as you're dragging the turnout, it will tell you the geometry of the turnout that you're dragging.
Oh,
And
that would be a lot better. I know the radio of what I'm working with, but I don't know the frog size necessarily.
It tells you that. It will tell you that. So, for instance, I had I've built turnouts for people, and he wanted it, and the inside, I think, was 15-inch radius, or I don't know, one part of it was 15-inch radius. I forget which part. And I would have sworn to you that that was a number 3 switch. Coming to find out, it was like a 4.5 or a 5. The frog was actually a 4.5 and a 5. So it's very interesting. It'll tell you all that information, and it's dynamic. So it's giving you a whole lot of information. The problem is, as I said, is it's not. You have to watch the demos. That's the best thing I can say is, and it's free to download. But if you're going to be creating a complicated section of track work that you want to hand lay, that's how I was able to do Mike Rose's curved yard ladder. Is with him, he had laid out freight cars out on, so that's how I was able to judge. I just guessed on that whole thing, and I was able to I printed the thing out on my printer, taped the whole thing together because it does print it out in 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. Taped the whole thing together, brought it to Mike Rose's, and it dropped right in place, perfect.
I wouldn't say that any of my track work is as complicated as Tim Morris's, New Jersey.
No.
I mean, not like that, but there's places where there's 6 or 8 turnouts with crossovers and Ys and stuff that are a little bit.
Yeah, what I've always wanted to do, but I've never had a reason to do it, is like South Station Terminal with the double slips going into double crossovers.
Yeah.
And there's actually on the Model Railroad Hobbyist website there's a build of a guy doing that. One of the Chicago terminals, I don't know which one. He had a picture of the yard ladder, and it's 6 tracks that go into 12, and they're all interlocked, and just an incredible piece. I've always wanted to do that, but never had the reason to actually do it.
Yeah, they're beautiful. The N&W, my railroad of choice, had that in Roanoke
right.
station. It is artwork in steel.
Yeah, the thing I always wanted to do, and I can't find the picture of it anymore. I think it's the East Joliet Yard on the EJ&E, and it's just the funkiest looking thing. When you look at the track work, it just makes your mind melt. Only because of what it does. It's not overly complicated. It's just bizarre. I think it's the Joliet. Hard.
Well, while you're looking for that, Troy, I want to go start the after show hangout.
Okay, sounds good, Johnny. Jim, I'd like to thank you for coming on here as it's 11 o'clock now. And just a little reminder to all the viewers to go onto the YouTube Model Builders website at www.youtubemodelbuilders.com for all the latest news and all the scheduled info and the live show, which is hosted by Big Bill Graham, which is once a month. Another reminder of the EMAG, which is a bi-monthly, and viewers can sign up for a subscription link to be emailed to you. Plus, the EMAG is always looking for other suggestions and stuff to be published with your pictures and stuff that you're working on. Don't forget about the all the new improved presentations with Geno, Barry, and Mike. MRR Tech shows newly added to the normal moderated presentations with Dude and I. Plus, don't forget about the Thursday night general hangouts with Johnny Reb of Southeast Rails. If there's any shows that you guys want to hear about or know about, go ahead and do up some posts and stuff. You guys want to hear about somebody special or anything else, you know, we can do our best to try to go and get something going on here to help everybody out to go ahead and learn. Once again, this is a free website, and welcome to all the questions and comments or anything else you guys or any other information you guys need to go ahead and be able to put up on there. I'd like to thank everybody again. Thanks again, Jim Lincoln, for coming on and giving us a great show.
You're very welcome.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Yes, Jim, I thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.